Welcome to the Spiggle Law Firm podcast, where we help people who've been fired or afraid that they might be, and we discuss cutting-edge employment law issues in the news. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by an attorney in our office, Jessica Greer, who has years of experience handling employment law cases. So very excited to get her perspective today on short and long-term disability. But before we jump into that, just a little bit of legalese for our listeners. This podcast is not intended to be legal advice for your specific issue, nor does it create an attorney-client relationship with the Spiggle Law Firm. If you want either of those things, you got it. You should go hire yourself a lawyer. I need to do it like the radio and say that faster than the legalese part. So welcome, Jessica. So let's start talking about short, long-term disability and just tell folks. I think most people have a basic concept of what that is, but how that works and how you see it in your practice.
Yeah, so short and long-term disability is kind of like an employee benefit, such as life insurance or medical insurance, or, any like retirement plan you would get that's, provided through your employer. It's an income replacement benefit that you can utilize when you are temporarily disabled, either short or long-term. So you will apply through it, whatever insurance your employer provides. And then while you're on leave, you'll receive a percentage of your income, like 60%, 70%. I think it varies. Do you know if Okay, yeah, it does vary. So, short-term covers a period of time, long-term covers a different period of time. And I've had a lot of clients who've been confused by it. They're either trying to get it, they already have it, they're trying to convert short to long-term. They are not sure whether or not they're protected while they're on this sort of leave.
To jump in real quick, I think you raise an important issue that I often see a lot of people get confused about, because it is confusing. Even for lawyers who practice in this area. There are a number, like if you have some kind of a health issue or a disability at work, there are a number of different laws that may cover you. As there's the Americans with Disabilities Act, there's Family Medical Leave Act, and I think a lot of people, and then there's short and long-term disability, and all of these things can provide leave. You can take leave from work while you are, saying, recovering from surgery or you've got an illness. And a lot of people are confused because the as you raise, which is an important point, is that this is an insurance contract. And it's not that there aren't laws that govern it. There are, but really the terms of it and how it works is the contract between you and the insurance company, and that's only offered through your employer. So, it's very different. They may overlap. You could be covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act. You could be on FMLA, and a lot of people do that, right? They'll take FMLA leave and short-term disability at the same time, but they're different. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, like you said, it's the insurance contract between you and your insurance company. So there are a lot of requirements, procedures, policies that vary depending on your contract. As per when you can request it, it has to be with a certain amount of time after the injury. And that varies. That can be the 5 days for short term, longer for long term. There's a certain time window that it covers. And, if you wait too long, you're out of luck. FMLA is a lot more broad and can cover more. And, that's easier to get, but also not easier, relatively, but less confusing than short and long-term disability.
Well, and I think why people kind of stack them sometimes is, right, you're not entitled to get paid while on FMLA leave. And so what a lot of people do, particularly for pregnancy, is they'll take FMLA or their PTO or whatever kind of approved leave that they have, and then also apply for short-term disability to get that, whatever it is. It's usually, like you said, usually 60%, you get some portion of your pay. And so that's where, we often see these issues kind of overlap. But it's, as you raise, like with short-term disability, let's back up and say under FMLA, right, the employer has this fiduciary duty. They've got a legal obligation to make sure that if you raise those issues, that you understand the law and that you understand the process to ask for that leave. That often is not done, but that's how it's supposed to work in practice. But with the short-term disability, which I think obviously more people do than long-term, it depends on what the contract says, right? There is no particular time frame generally under the FMLA to request that leave, but under short-term disability, because it's a contract between you and the insurance company, you have to comply with that contract. And I think that's, understandably, people get confused by that because there's no, it's not the same as a federal law that applies to leave.
Yeah, and it becomes even more nuanced when you're trying to switch from short term to long term disability. If you're already on disability, you need to apply for that extension or, apply for a new long term disability. And that, takes some time to approve. And you're not going to be paid during that time while you're waiting for it to get approved. And, a lot of people don't really consider that, that it has to go through that paperwork of an insurance company and it's not going to be like immediate. And there's a long process for that too. So it's like taking into consideration all these things.
Right, absolutely. And I think as you know, for like going from short term to long term disability, I mean, insurance companies are looking for reasons to deny claims. I think we've all had experience with that, right? If you don't dot all your I's and cross all your T's, they are looking for reasons to deny those claims. And going from short term, I mean, obviously, it's from a financial point of view for the insurance company. I mean, long term disability is, as it says, it's a long term disability, and so that that pay, they'll be paying out for can be years at times, and so they really, I mean, and it's I think this is true. Anytime you're taking leave from work, whether you're going under short term or long term disability, and there's overlap with the Americans with Disabilities Act, FMLA, you name it, to be working with your doctors, right? Because your doctors, if you're working with our firm or another law firm, to be working with your attorneys, right? Because there are, this is where it gets really confusing. There are different definitions, of, like, for example, a disability under the ADA.
Yeah.
Than for what qualifies for short-term disability, and sometimes depending on how you frame it or how you make the request, you can take yourself out of one box or the other without knowing that. So it's really important to be working with your attorney, have your doctors on board, particularly if you're going for long-term disability. And that's an issue too, where you may, and again, it doesn't mean that you're trying to be in every bucket all the time, but if you are under the ADA, right, and you are applying for long-term disability, a lot of times for long-term disability, you have to say, I cannot work, which can take you out of the Americans with Disabilities bucket, right? Because under the ADA, you have to be able to work with or without reasonable accommodation. So that's one that could be not impossible, but a tricky needle to thread, and how you frame it, both from the legal and the medical side, can be pretty important.
Yeah, and that you said something that I want to bring up something about, when you're saying you're on short-term disability, you're completely unable to work. And there are some people, I know that this issue has come up, where they're on disability and they want to start looking for a new job, and whether you're allowed to do that or not. And whether you're allowed, sometimes people want to continue working other jobs while they're on short-term disability. And is that allowed, or is it not? What I've found about working another job, if it's a comparable job to the job that you're saying you can't do, then you're going to be in trouble. But if you're taking a less impact, less stressful, or less stressful on your disability job, that's okay. But it all depends.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going from operating a jackhammer to a desk job, right? You could be disabled, or you could have an issue that doesn't allow you to operate a jackhammer, but you could still do desk work. But it's an important point, because again, these insurance companies, you can bet they're reading the fine print of their own policy. And, if you want to continue working other jobs, it may or may not be appropriate. And with long-term disability, it becomes even more, the scrutiny becomes even more. I mean, I've had clients where they will hire, private, this is somewhat unusual, but not unheard of, for them to hire private investigators to go and follow you around or sit outside your house to see if you are in fact, if you're claiming that you can't, you are disabled, and then they, get photographs of you out there, lifting heavy bags of mulch to work in your garden, they'll use those issues. So that again is really important, for you to be working with your doctor and to understand that they are going to be, it's going to be very unlikely you're going to be able to sneak something by them. They're looking for any reason to deny that policy. That doesn't mean you can't get it, but it does mean you raised an important point. I mean, there can be times when you can be, under short or long-term disability and work another job. But there can be times where the insurance company is going to say, hey, by definition, because you can work at this other job, you can work at your current job, so you can't get this disability. So it's a good point.
Yeah, and another thing that we were talking about a little bit earlier about the protections, the legal protections while you're on short term versus like something like FMLA. Whereas FMLA, you cannot fire someone where they're on FMLA, and a lot of people think that's the same thing with short term disability, but it's not.
Exactly right. Yeah, you have much more protection under the FMLA. You're not getting paid,
Yeah.
right? That's the big difference. But you have a lot more protections than you do, under short term disability, and you can be terminated while you're on short term disability in a way. I mean, it's possible to be legally terminated under FMLA, but it's a much higher bar for the employer to meet. So it doesn't. You're right. There's no job protection like under the FMLA. They basically have to keep your
Open
job.
for you.
Yeah, right. You got to get the same benefits. You got to get the same pay when you come back as if you never left. Not true for short term and long term disability. So all things to be thinking about, when you're, because getting leave from work can be
Yeah.
tough, right? And a lot of people need it, and they want that position to be protected. So it's important that you do it, in the right way to maximize the benefits that you can get, because you can overlap. You can, we talked a lot about FMLA or go out under American with Disabilities Act leave, and get paid, and get paid under the short-term disability portion of it. But you got to be, there are different rules and different protections that apply.
Yeah.
I think the big legal issues that are covered under short-term and long-term disability are like with any kind of insurance product. It's basically a contract between you and your employer. I mean, or in this case, the insurance company. You can have breach of contract claims for insurance. You can have bad faith claims where you are essentially arguing they're denying you in bad faith. So those are claims you can have against your insurance company, but that's against your insurance company. It's not against your employer. And there are differences there too, right? For those claims, you're generally, for example, under FMLA or under Americans Disabilities Act, if you win those claims, then your employer has to cover your attorney's fees. Not true when you're bringing bad faith claims, when you're bringing breach of contract claims against your insurance company. If you win, you're not entitled to get those attorney's fees. And as you know, you also don't have the protections of the EEOC process, for better or worse. Not so much under the FMLA, but under the ADA, right? I mean, you can file a charge with the EEOC. There's some protections there. There's right to mediation. There's none of that with short and long-term disability. It's either you are getting covered under the policy, or if you're trying to bring a claim, you're going, you're hiring a lawyer and going straight to court.
There are a lot of differences there. And a lot of people think, their employer is responsible for their short-term disability, and any issues they have with short or long-term disability, they blame their employer. It's not the person you need to be blaming, the insurance company.
Yeah, it's your insurance company. It's confusing because it's offered as a benefit right through your employer. But it's administered by the insurance company. And a lot of times, as you've probably seen, Jessica, they're administered by a third-party company. It may not even be the insurance company. It can be somebody the insurance company contracts with to process the claims. I mean, the insurance company is still responsible, but and the same is true with FMLA leave. Just to confuse it even more, a lot of times companies, and the company is responsible, right, for complying with FMLA, but they'll have a third party, administer it. So you'll go and you'll say, hey, I need this leave. And they'll say, well, hey, send all your information to this 1-800 fax number, because there's this third party company, often which is an insurance company, to help them administer it. And the same is true for the long and short term disability, right? The insurance companies administer it. So you go to the company and say, hey, I want to file a claim, and they'll be like, great, go over here to do that, because it's the insurance company who's handling that process. So, but I understand why people are getting confused and think, wow, it's my employer's responsibility to make sure I get this, and it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, one would hope, and I think most employers will cooperate with you, but sometimes they're less than cooperative, and there's not a lot under other laws. There are things that you can do, but there's not a lot generally, that you can do in regards to your employer, with getting your short and long-term disability.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are scenarios under which an employer could have some liability, particularly if they did something, which I haven't seen, but I assume it probably has happened somewhere, where they try to tank your claim or somehow interfere with it. You could have some kind of joint liability. I've never seen that. If somebody is listening to this and think that's a possibility, you should go talk to your attorney. But it's usually, either your insurance company that you have an issue with the policy, or it's the employer if we're talking about a federal or state law.
Yeah. Lots of nuances. And it varies. And I mean, I hate giving the lawyer answer, as always. It depends. But
Right. It's so true. In this situation, it depends. And, it is helpful to have a lawyer. Although, it is, we do both, right? We will help employees with their long-term disability, with their short-term disability, and with their, related federal laws. So that's helpful. But sometimes, like, we don't do a lot of long-term disability claims, particularly if they're
Yeah.
denied. It tends to be a very specialized area of law. We tend to refer those cases out. So, not only does it depend, sometimes you'll need more than one lawyer, which is possible, to help you out with various different kinds of claims, because they are so different, particularly for long-term disability. Veterans disability claims, completely different issue, which is not something that we get
Hmm.
into. So, but mostly, for example, if you came to us and another lawyer who handled these matters, they'll be able to, direct you or help you find, if he or she, like for example, Jessica, if you don't deal with the issue, we could help one of our clients
Yeah.
find somebody, refer them to help them with a long-term disability issue. If it's getting outside of our realm of what we usually handle.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a great topic. Anything else I haven't asked you about or you want to add?
Nothing off the top of my head. No, thank you.
No, I think it's a great one. It comes up a lot, and it's confusing a lot to
Yeah.
lawyers. I can understand people who, have got better things to do with their time than to read the fine print of insurance policy or federal labor law, how this can be, a bit of a thicket. So law firms like ours are here to help, but make sure you do your research when you're getting into these, because it's really complicated. All right, Jessica, thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
I'm going to let you hop off and say goodbye to
All
our
right.
audience
Goodbye.
here. Well, thank you so much for joining Jessica and I today for the episode. If you want to share this with somebody, we're trying to get the word out to as many people as we can. If you want more information along these lines, you can go to our website, thecareerrocket.io. If you give us your email there, every week you'll get an email chock full of information, not only about employment law, but how to keep your career on an upward trajectory. And I recently released a new book called Fired, or Afraid You Might Be, which you can find on Amazon or you can find through our website, that can give you a really high level look at how to conduct your own employment law issues, or how to just be an educated consumer if you're working with an attorney. Thanks so much. And in the meantime, good luck out there.